The show Hey Arnold stormed on a Nickelodeon and took over TV in 1996. It was a huge success, full of life lessons, beautiful jazz, stunning backgrounds, and unique character designs. Most notably, Arnold, the kid with the football-shaped head. He was a young 4th grader at PS 118 who was just going through the world trying to get along and help whenever he could. The show ran for 5 seasons with a grand total of 100 amazing episodes and 2 movies. But what I want to talk to you about is the years-long journey that took place for this show to happen. And that journey starts here. What you're looking at is the 1985 claymation movie titled The Adventures of Mark Twain. The studio behind it was Will Vinton Productions, owned by a man of the same name. The movie is a fictional story memorializing the ideas of Mark Twain and the works he's done as a writer. It somewhat breaks the fourth wall by having Mark Twain's characters, Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, and Becky Thatcher, stow away on a flying ship that Mark plans to ride off into Halley's Comet as the final poetic send-off, a play on his famous quote, "I came in with Halley's Comet in 1835. It is coming again next year, and I expect to go out with it. It will be the greatest disappointment of my life if I don't go out with Halley's Comet. The Almighty has said, no doubt. Now here are these 2 unaccountable freaks. They come in together, they must go out together." The movie was a great effort of storytelling, but was a total flop in the box office, earning $850,000 after spending $1.5 million. But that's not important. What's really important is the credits. Hiding amongst a wall of other names, you can find a principal character animator by the name of Craig Bartlett. You see, Craig is the creator of Hey Arnold, and this movie was his first step into the world of professional animation. Here he animated Captain Stormfield and the Aliens. Their story is based on Mark Twain's Captain Stormfield's visit to heaven. Craig stated that his time at Will Vinton was like an apprenticeship where he cut his teeth on all things studio animation. He spent time here creating things like Return to Oz and advertisements like the Noids. What's important is he built his skills and resume up enough to apply for a position animating for a little show called Pee-wee's Playhouse. You might have heard of it. At the time, Pee-wee's Playhouse was going into season 2, and there was a claymation segment called Penny. This segment was about a girl with pennies for eyes who talked about her interest in things going on in her daily life. And I'd like to clear up 2 things here. 1, the penny concept was originally created by the Aardman animation team, based out of Bristol, UK. Craig Bartlett didn't create the idea of Penny. And 2, Arnold didn't start on this show. He was made during this time, but was never in any of the episodes. But here's where Craig picked up a vital piece to the Arnold puzzle. You see, Penny was shot using a down shooter setup with a glass pane and interchangeable backgrounds, something similar to this. Up to this point, Craig had worked mainly with upright 3D clay models, a much more time-consuming and difficult way to animate clay. This new setup allowed him to lay the characters flat, allowing for speed, stability, and in my opinion, the ability to push the proportions of characters to the extremes. Craig worked on season 2 and 3 of Penny, but in 1988, between seasons, Craig was out of work and had the idea of building his own down shooter setup like the one on Penny, except in his home. He started molding clay and working on characters. And in the back of his mind, he had the words of his brother-in-law, a fellow creator, telling him that good characters have silhouettes that are iconic. Then bip bop boom, out comes a football head with asymmetrical hair and a slightly off-center hat. He just brought a new idea into the world, and he named his creation Arnold, after his wife's uncle, Arnold Wiggum. Does that last name sound familiar? Well, I'll explain it later. So, without his time on Penny and him learning about the downshooter method, we don't get Arnold as we know him. So now Arnold exists, and Craig has created one Arnold short, Arnold Escapes from Church. The piece is about a young Arnold who's sitting in Sunday service, letting his mind wander while the preacher and congregation are reciting scripture.
Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me.
So now we have some real animated work, but it's only 1988. The show Hey Arnold doesn't air until 1996. What was happening during all of that time? Well, Craig was working odd jobs in animation. He'd do some ads and other small segments in shows. We start to see Arnold pop up in different programming. In 1990, A short titled The Arnold Waltz was created and featured in the International Tourney of Animation, Volume 4. He also appears on another tiny little program called Sesame Street. Craig had a relationship with Sesame Street ever since the 1986 Claymation segment he did called Marty the Chair, where a chair stumbles around a room until he finds his glasses. So that relationship led him to create the character segment Lillian, and then another segment with Arnold this time, called Arnold Rides His Chair. Now, I can't actually pinpoint if this was originally created for Sesame Street or if it was one of the original Claymations made in 1988. However, this was a claymation of Arnold using his imagination to go to distant lands and explore. He sees things like fish, birds, and tropical lands, all while never leaving the comfort of his chair. Looking back, it almost feels like an allegory. The chair represents a throne, and Arnold is quite young at this point and unknown, but is destined to reign as king atop the orange throne that is Nickelodeon. Even the animals slightly mimic the name of the show that's gonna be. Hello Arnold. Some of them even saying Hey Arnold. It's very strange. Then we get another major piece of the Hey Arnold puzzle, The Simpsons, or more specifically, Simpsons Illustrated. This was a magazine that came out 2 years after the original television premiere of Simpsons. From the very first issue, they had a comic strip by Craig Bartlett titled Arnold. The strip focused on the Arnold character often drifting off from reality using his imagination. He was constantly distracted and would snap back to reality when an adult or a kid called out to him to pay attention. The strips are some of the most interesting media that I've found while researching this topic, and I encourage you to check them out. I'll link them in the description below along with the other resources I found. Now, not that it may or may not have made a difference in the longevity of the comic strip, but at the time, Craig Bartlett was married to the Simpsons creator Matt Groening's sister, Lisa. That family is very interesting, since they all have characters named after them: Marge, Homer, Lisa, Maggie, Wiggum, and Arnold. So, family ties. Well, eventually, those family ties turned into industry connections because Matt Groening worked on The Simpsons minutes from the Tracy Ullman Show with a man by the name of Paul Germain. Paul Germain knew Craig through Matt, and when Paul, Arlene Klasky, and Gabor Chupo were brainstorming a cartoon about talking babies, he had Craig Bartlett in mind to help the concept come to life. That cartoon would later go on to be called Rugrats, and Craig was brought on as the story editor, basically the head writer, even though he'd never written full scripts and up to this point had only really done claymation. Fun fact, Craig created Cynthia for the show, and I can completely see it. He has this thing for drawing blonde-haired girls with spiked-out pigtails. From 1991 to 1992, Craig spent some years creating Rugrats. In 1993, Arnold had one last comic strip in The Simpsons Illustrated, but after that, he wasn't seen commercially until 1996. But that didn't mean nothing was happening behind the scenes. In the summer of 1993, a group of 6 people, including Craig, created some show ideas to pitch to Mary Harrington, the executive producer at Nickelodeon. They all bombed during the pitch. However, while sitting in the meeting, someone mentioned the Penny cartoons that Craig had worked on. So Craig pulls out his VHS demo reel for Penny, and at the beginning of the VHS tape, there were 3 original Arnold shorts. Mary was immediately intrigued by the character design, so he shows her the 3 original Arnold claymations that he made in his home and the Simpsons illustrated comic strips that he created. She was completely in love with the Arnold Rides the Grinder comic strip. It portrays Arnold as a laid-back kid riding an insane roller coaster, giving no reaction, at least not until he's home sleeping, where he wakes up in a cold sweat screaming. This one moment of her noticing these shorts, a complete accident, is what we owe hours of entertainment to, is what Nickelodeon owes a huge part of their legacy to, and it's what Craig had been waiting years for. So from there on, they go to work on the show. The concept was loosely based off of Charlie Brown, the similarities being jazzy scores, emotionally heavy episodes, and realistically traversing the world through a kid's view. The idea of the boarding house came from housing in Portland, Oregon, where freeways were put up overhead of Victorian-style row houses that had existed there. The overall city aesthetic came from a combination of Seattle, Portland, and Tacoma. They created a pilot episode that never aired on Nick, but would later be remade into the episode 24 Hours to Live. So we have our concept, our characters, our city, and our pilot. But we still need a theme song. What if I told you that the original theme song for Hey Arnold was much less impressive than the one we know today? The first rendition of a theme song was a Dino Spumoni-esque song called You Crazy Cat.
You crazy cat in your natty hat. I really love the way your head is shaped.
Needless to say, it was not popular amongst the executives who were looking for something more 90s kid friendly. So it was back to the drawing board for Craig. When he had the idea to use an old melody and jingle he initially wrote for Dunkin' Donuts years ago. The lyrics were originally,
I got the feeling for a donkey today. A Dunkin' Donuts, Dunkin' Donut.
He built off that idea and turned it into, with this brand new fresh idea, he pitched it again and it was an instant hit. They had a finished product that was ready for TV. They showed the unaired pilot in theaters before the 1996 movie Harriet the Spy, and then later premiered the series on Nickelodeon October 7th, 1996. As always, if you made it this far, take the time to drop a like and subscribe, because your support helps the channel grow and keeps you up to date on my videos. I also created a Patreon if you want to show further support. I'll be giving early access to content there as well as some behind the scenes content. Until next time, see ya.